Alrighty guys, I'm going to make a start. So I'm still diving into those questions that you put up a number of days ago because I think they're really important. Okay, so next question on my list to answer and talk about was how to improve a horse's confidence under saddle. Okay, this is a really important one. So just to reiterate what I always do with these particular lives is that I read out the question, I'll give my insights, and then I'll hand it over to you. So you guys, please, when you're there and you're listening to me, ask a question. If something pops into your head, type it out, okay? Because there is that little bit of delay that I've got here. Just type out a query or an additional bit of information that you think is that you think is important, okay? And pop it down, enter it in, and I'll address it and read them all out after I finish my advice. Okay, so how to improve a horse's confidence under saddle. Interesting, helping a horse's confidence and trust is very similar to how I help yours, okay? Or how you build your own confidence and trust in the horse. Okay, so the horse needs to develop confidence in these realms. It needs to be confident in the job that you're asking it to do. And to start with, that job is just having a rider on their back, walk, trot and cantering without falling over. So they've got to feel confidence in their own balance and what's actually happening to them. And then they need to develop confidence in all the tasks that you give them, whether that is you might want them to jump, etc. You might want them to do dressage. You might want them to chase cows, or you just might want to, you just want to trail ride them or something like that. So when it comes to that, it's just time to build their confidence. So they need to be introduced to it in very small stages, in very simple kind of ways, and then build on that. It's very common for people to blow their horse's trust. So just say common example is with, they have a young horse, a really lovely, willing young horse that they have, comes back from the breakers, is really lovely, and they even go out to, practice a few little jumps and stuff like that. But after their first riding club or small event or whatever, the horse suddenly develops anxiety. And that is a clear indication that normally what they've done, they've pushed that horse too far, too quickly. Okay, so, it might have been okay popping over, one little jump, but then they've taken them out on the cross-country course and they've kind of overwhelmed them. And, they might have ridden them for that little bit of extra long time and the horse has got sore doing it. So the horse has developed an association between, what it's doing and sore, or the jump was a little bit bigger and the rider, grabbed the horse in the mouth on the way down, or, and the horse just lost its confidence in what it was doing. Okay, so so there's that realm of confidence. So you got to get the horse confident just with someone sitting on their back doing all their gaits, and confident that they're not feeling unbalanced. Feeling unbalanced is a really overwhelming thing for a horse to experience. So that's why I'm getting you to do Pilates and be fit and everything like that. And also why I like developing horses on the ground first before you get at them under saddle, because you're developing their physical balance as well as getting them confident with what you're actually doing to them and wanting them to do. There is another aspect of it though, and that is trust. Okay, so trust is very important because horses can be obedient, okay, but they can be obedient, but they won't trust you. Okay, they won't trust you. They'll be doing things out of fear and not just out of clarity. Okay, so you've also got to develop a horse's trust, and developing a horse's trust is being reliable. And that's reliable in how you present yourself, reliable that you never, overwhelm them, or freak them out too much or hurt them. A very common way of hurting a horse is having no respect that it's not fit and making it go for, long periods of time on certain surfaces, etc. Okay, so horse has to sense that you are reliable and, predictable, and you're not going to hurt them. Okay, so confidence and trust are kind of two different but similar related things that go hand in hand. Okay, so how do you do that? As I said, it's making sure that the horse is prepared, starting small before you add on. And the biggest problem that I have with people is not knowing what small is, not knowing what simple is, not knowing when they have evidence the horse is ready to move on and ready to add on and ready to challenge, okay, to go up that next level. That's what people really struggle with, is being able to identify those things. There's a common saying that we talk about with horses all the time about that, it's all about perfecting the basics and having a really good foundation of the basics. But the problem is, right, what are the basics? Okay, what is actually the basic thing? All right, so my thing is my basics are very, very tiny. So my basic starts in that round pen. That's my choice. Sometimes people don't have access to a round pen, so we work on groundwork with a halter on. But working a horse in a round pen is simpler and easier for it than groundwork with a halter on. Okay, so my basics are very simple. Okay, my basics are not, walk, trot, working canter or whatever, or turn left, turn right. My basics is in a round pen with nothing on it, that the only thing controlling it is the wall of the round yard and the energy that you direct at it. That's my basics. So it's all well and good that saying, but it's getting people to understand what are the basics. What response do you have to have really, really good? And then how do you add on to that? Okay, so there's lots of, with that, you got to learn technique. You got to learn, observations of the horse. You need to learn a whole lot of things on top of that. So that's my insights into that, is how you do it. Now, how do you improve it? Guess what? How you improve a horse's confidence is that you go back to the start. And that is a massive challenge for people. I get told all the time, oh, I just don't want to go back. I've spent so much time doing groundwork. I don't want to go back. But you see, the thing is, you've been doing groundwork, but you haven't been doing it very well, and you haven't done it for what its purpose is. So go back. Now, I have massive amounts of patience for people like this, which is what most people are, is because I was exactly the same. I was really funny. So when I discovered kind of the ability to understand in training and influence a horse better, I just did everything in the saddle, right? I discovered things in the saddle. I didn't want to do that groundwork stuff. It wasn't necessary. Okay, I was just doing stuff in the saddle. And I made, big, massive changes in the saddle, and I was real happy about that. But I kept finding myself, I kept having to fix it. I'd make positive things, it would fall apart, and I'd fix it. And then it would fall apart again, and then I'd fix it. And then I went, oh, okay, I will just go and have a play around with that groundwork. And it was like, oh, that made that better, and then, and then I was like, oh, if I do that, oh, look, that makes that better too. and then I just remember the day I went, you know what? I am just going to start from scratch. I'm just going to pretend this horse is completely unbroken, and I'm going to completely reboot it, and so like, I remember I used to compete a lot, very much into competing, and I remember I just went, right, no, I'm going to do this all this. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to do it all again. So I canned and cleared out all my competition calendar, and I made sure I did it. It was over summer where there weren't a lot of competitions, and I had 4 horses at the time, and I just went through all of them. I just took them all back to nothing, and I started again, and that was the greatest thing I did. And then through that learning process, I kept going back because I kept learning more and more and more about getting this better and that better. So I just kept going. I just kept going back. And after a period of time, I've got no qualms about going back. That's just how I know that you fix it. So it's just matter of fact now. There's no emotion attached to it. Okay, handing it over to what you guys have to say. Okay, Virginia's here. Awesome. Okay, Zoe, Bridget needs new things broken down into very small, very manageable pieces, yeah, especially when it's putting her body in different positions. But once she gets it, she owns it. Yeah, there's lots of horses like that. Lots of horses, and, there's lots of lovely horses that I've met through over time. Horses all have a learning style, okay? They all have a bit of a learning style. And some will be... oh, that's new, I'm a bit worried about that, or I'm not sure about that, oh, that's it, oh, I've got it, no worries. Okay, lots of them are like that. Lots of them are like, okay, this is new, I've got to work you out. Okay, got it. oh, that's that new thing again. What was that again? Okay, I've got it. Yes, I've got it now. You know, they've all got their own little personalities, and their own little learning style. And one of the things is when you do go back to the round yard or do go back to groundwork is you get to know their learning style. You get to really know them, so you can know and predict. It's like, okay, this is them just feeling challenged. This is what they tend to do. They get a bit rushy, or they get a little bit sticky with their feet when they're thinking about stuff. You get to know their personality and their learning style. Okay, Zoe, again, ask 3 different horse people what the basics is and you'll get a dozen different answers. Absolutely. Okay, so that's why that comment about basics is glorious. You know, everything's good to do with the basics, but it is funny because, yeah, well, what are they? That's the $6 million question. Okay, Zoe, I love groundwork. The better I get that, the less time it takes to check it over. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay. I've got Deb, I've got Zoe, I've got lots of people in here, which is really cool. All right, so that's my answer to that question. Now, my next question is getting over wanting to be liked by the horse. Oh my goodness, this is a massive one. And it was only something really in the last couple of years that I detected as being a barrier to building your confidence and trust in the horse and the horse's confidence and trust in you. Because I'd always have the people that, you know, they'd come to me and they'd always struggle to escalate pressure. And there was always this thing, they'd always be the person that when they had to escalate pressure and, you know, they'd have to actually make contact with the horse, they'd always miss or they'd hit the saddle. And it took me a long time to kind of work out what was actually going on there. I thought, and that can be a number of reasons. There can be the people that won't escalate pressure because they're worried about just generally upsetting the horse and causing it anxiety and making it angry or worried or whatever. But then I worked out there was this thing in people that the main thing they valued that was really, they were really sensitive to and would really get upset about is they thought the horse didn't like them. You know, so they'd always report to me, it's like, oh, she wouldn't come to me today in the paddock. You know, they'd say things like that, or she turned and walked away from me, and they'd be very heartbroken, or they'd have lots of glares like, oh, you know, she actually pricked her ears up at me and took a step towards me, or didn't walk away from me, or whatever. So this really big thing about, you know, the horse being really agreeable to the horse and the horse really liking them. Yeah, it can be a massive barrier. It's a massive, massive barrier for some people because what happens is that they lack being black and white. They lack being very clear and having very clear, consistent consequences with the horse. And it just makes them grey. And horses they actually get frustrated and confused by people that are not clear. So it really is, it's a really sad thing. So you've got people wanting the horse to like them, but they're actually doing, and what they're actually doing to the horse's perception is making themselves very confusing. And so they're that confusing person that doesn't make any sense. And horses don't have this like, well, you're confusing, but you give me carrots. You know, I'll just be nice to you anyway. That's not like that. They're not like that. They're like, just give me the carrot and leave me alone. You know, if I have to deal with you, you're just annoying. And so there's all these people that's, you know, that they're loving the horse to death. They're wanting the horse to desperately like them, and they're not actually realizing the horse is looking at them really negatively, and they're swishing their tail and they're not wanting to be with them at all. They're really quite frustrated by them. So yeah, it is something that you've got to understand, and it's understanding the emotions of the horse and where they're coming from. It's understanding and respecting how a horse understands and perceives the world, and understanding the horse is not, that they're not like us. Okay, they're different. Their world is a very physical world. It's not a. And although they have a social world with each other, they don't necessarily have that social world with us. We've got to construct it physically first. We do that with pressure, etc. By creating these boundaries. Yeah, and then you can form very good, very special relationships with horses, but they require you to enter their world and to see the world from the way that they construct it first, to be able to do that, to be able to have that clear communication and boundaries. Look, and even creating boundaries is just something you actually have to be a good friend anyway to another human being. There's one thing that I've learned in life is that, is actually having boundaries and people doing hard things for you that actually means whether they're a really true friend or they truly love you, like it's, and Brene Brown talks about it all the time. It's just like having clear boundaries and learning to overcome that discomfort of sticking up for your boundaries, which is actually a real key to actually being able to make really good connections with other people, very true ones. Okay, so it's deep, and it actually, although with horses it's important because they perceive the world physically and the physical consequences and the physical boundaries or whatever involved. With humans, it's actually important too, and that's another 16 lives that I could talk about on that. Okay, so just going now to your comments on that. So Hanifa, that's me. I thought Jasper didn't come to me because he didn't like me. Okay, well, because and sometimes it's actually true. They find you confusing, and they find you a bit irritating when you're not you're not clear and reliable to them. And when you're full of this emotion of wanting them to like you, they don't get that. They just see you as being full of chaos. They don't get that. So they make you level yourself out, and then they'll give themselves to you. They're not like dogs. Hanifa actually just a little while ago, she put a good thing up about dogs, and I'm going to talk about dogs in two ways in this particular live. I want to talk about when they bark at you on the other side of the fence and what to do. But also I want to talk about how I actually do believe that dogs and our relationship with dogs confuses us with horses. And Hanifa's good because Hanifa's a very good dog trainer, but she has a lot of trouble splitting the two species up because she's so involved with dogs, is that it's hard to not think of a horse like a dog. Okay, the difference between dogs and humans and how they relate to us. There's two very important things to understand, because we all own dogs, we all love dogs, and we kind of then have this kind of preconceived idea about horses as well and put them in the same kind of bracket. However, okay, so with dogs, first of all, we've bred them and manipulated them a lot, but we've been able to change dogs from wolves, right? And one of the things we've been able to do is that we've been able to make them form attachments to us very, very easily. They're very willing to form an attachment. And in the studies that they've done with dogs, so dogs attach themselves to their owners very similar to how children attach themselves to parents. Okay, it's very similar. They all follow all the same kind of symptoms of attachment distress and wanting attachment. What happened, so dogs are very willing to attach to you, okay? So they'll just hand themselves over. We kind of bred them, manipulate them, that most dogs will connect themselves to you when they meet you as the puppy, right? Or they spend a bit of time with you. They'd run the same experiments with horses, right? Horses don't attach. They don't attach. They get a sense of security from people. They do. They could see that. But the horse didn't care who the human was. It didn't matter if it was the owner or a stranger. Okay, so they kind of worked out the horses don't form the same attachments as willingly. I'm not saying they don't, but dogs are a lot more willing to form attachments than horses. Okay, they're a little bit different in that regard. All right, so that's a little bit I wanted to talk about dogs. But when because Hanifa works with dogs, she's used to that element within it, that dog's kind of willingness to connect, to actually really, they just hand themselves over on kind of like a bit of a platter. Whereas the horses are so special because they elevate you, they make you, they don't forgive you. They want you to be of a certain quality, and they make you strive for that. And when you get there, they will do very special things for you. But they make you lift yourself, okay, to another standard and another level of awareness. All right, so just handing over now to the comments, if there's any extra comments there. Alrighty, so let's just go to the next question I've got there. The warning signs that a horse is about to go over the edge of his threshold and how to bring him back. Okay, this is one of those questions again, and I don't care how many times it's saying we need to prevent horses from even looking like or going over particular threshold. That's always the aim of training, and that's the awareness in our mind has to be, and you've got to learn how to do that. Like, how do you present a horse with something, teach them something, put them in some kind of situation where you prevent and minimize and risk manage that situation so it doesn't happen. Okay, and that has to be the focus of when you're with them and when you're engaging them, has to be this thought process. And it is something that you've got to learn how to do, and it is something that actually develops with your confidence and trust. So building confidence and trust is actually aligned and in parallel and connected to your ability to be able to do this and risk manage. Okay, so that's, I'm going to keep repeating that, and I will, because that's what we got to learn to do. That's the aim of the game and everything like that. However, what happens? Okay, let's just answer that question anyway. Just say I was in a situation where something happened, okay, and the horse is about to go over its threshold. How do I know? Okay, how do I know? As I know by a lot of things. Okay, so first of all, you can look at the posture of the horse. Let's start with that. Posture of the horse, when the horse is becoming overwhelmed, of course, they become very tense. And what happens, the startle kind of reflex goes with it. Horses will extend their spine. Okay, so you'll see them hollow. They'll extend and they'll lift their head. Okay, so you'll see them, they'll get tense. They'll get tense and their spine will extend, which means like this. Instead of flex, like how we want them when they're ridden, they'll hollow their back and they'll extend their spine. Okay, you know, and you can see their muscles going rock hard, and you can see their breathing become very shallow, like they're normally like they will hold their breath. Okay, and then depending on the breed or the individual type. So some horses, when they become very agitated or about to go over threshold, some will become agitated and want to move. Okay, so they'll want to move, so they might start, so at a low level they might start pawing the ground. The ones that throw to the ones that want to move, they might start pawing the ground or pushing on things, or just generally a lot more movement will happen in them because, you know, inside their body's going, I'm worried, and they're wanting to create distance from whatever is worrying it has been triggered, right? And so and it will escalate and escalate and escalate until they will just want to move, and they'll be like a big struggle and they'll be out of there. Okay, but normally as well, you'll see their eyes will widen, they'll have a reduced blink rate, their nose will flare, okay, their face will be tight, okay, and you can just feel the chaos and the energy around them. Okay, now they're quite easy to pick, those ones. Okay, they're quite easy to pick, but there is a group of horses, and I mentioned them and I talked about them a couple of times in the live as well, is how these horses tend to have a bit of draft breed in them, a more European type breed in them, or there are some quarter horses like this as well that tend to flip into more fight. So those horses tend to, instead of moving more, they do the opposite. They start slowing down more. Okay, they're more the ones to like stand their ground and say no. Okay, but they as well will start tense up. You know, they'll always most likely form the posture that they'll hollow their back, and there'll be a lot of tightness and breathing, but their movement will be slower, okay, because they're the ones that more flip into fight, and that will lash out. Yeah, so that's kind of how you can tell. Other things, like other little pointers that I can tell you, just say when I'm working a horse, just say I'm working a horse for the first time and I'm working out my feel with that particular horse. So I'm working out what kind of pressure range it works in. So, there are some horses, depending on how sensitive they are, that I can just wave the whip a little bit and that'll be enough to motivate them. However, there's some horses, depending on, and if you do my course, my round pen course, you'll find out about the horse's flight zone, and all horses have a flight zone, which is like, kind of how much pressure they can stand before they move, and I explain why there's a reason why round pens are traditionally 50 foot. There's the size is related to a horse's flight zone. All right. So when I'm working a horse, I'm working out it's my level of feel, like how much energy motivates this horse. If it's a very sensitive horse with a very big flight zone, in other words, it's very, very sensitive, I don't have to do very much. All right. However, if it's one with a smaller flight zone, I might have to be a little bit more serious with my pressure to create that motivation for it to move. The horse is a little bit more, and we call it a little duller. Okay. So what I'm doing when I'm working that horse out and I'm watching it and observing it, I'm looking at how reactive it's being. I'm looking at its feet moving. I'm looking at, how its regularity or its kind of chaoticness of its movement. Okay, or it's all related to its tension. I'm looking to see whether, how quickly its drive line will be, its reflexes are being triggered. I'm looking at things like that. And I'm watching how, just say, and, do my round penning course and also with groundwork, the most important transition that I want to see that is very, very important to me, and I teach people about being able to observe it very, very carefully, is the trot canter transition. That's a very, very significant transition where a lot of things happen physiologically as well as biomechanically and emotionally happen at that particular transition. So I watch how that horse transitions into canter. That transition point's really important, because if it canters like it's been electrocuted, or it canters with some chaos, right, and a kick up, I know that horse is not in a good place. Like it's either worried about its balance or it's worried about what's happening to it. So I'm watching that particular. That's a really key transition to take a lot of notice of. And I know that I'm going really good places with that horse when that transition becomes just really relaxed, like it just pops up into a canter off my point. I know I've got that horse is in a good place, or getting in a good place. All right, so if a horse does go over threshold, how do you bring him back? All right, how do you bring him back? All right, well, how do you bring them back? Is it sometimes it just requires you to just keep repeating and being the same. You see, sometimes just say if I have a horse that's being, it's really, it comes to me, it's a really, really troubled horse. And I might ask it to leave in the round pen, and it might say no, or I'm not quite sure. And I might have to give it a tap, and that will just, it'll make it go into a really high arousal state, okay, really high level. And if I kept adding pressure to it, it would blow up. But what I do is that I tap it, I ask it, and I just keep asking it, and I just let it keep moving and keep moving and keep moving and keep working it out. Okay, so I just keep asking it the same thing, all right, and I let it get confident with that. I don't keep and then I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this. I remember years ago when I was working a horse, and one lesson that I learned is that, I was asking it to groundwork, and I was kind of expecting it to do everything really, really well. Anyway, this horse just wouldn't really relax. It was doing everything, but it was doing everything, and it was just really up. And then I kind of realized that there I was expecting it to send really well, do the circle really well, and stop really well. I was being a really hard taskmaster. So it was having to learn 3 things it was having to do, and I was expecting them all to be fabulous. And then that was when I worked out that, how I changed the way I approached the horse, was that I just focused on send. I didn't really give a care if it's going around the circle wasn't very good, and I didn't really care its quality of its stop. I just focused on it getting a really good send, you know, and then that got good, and then it was like a really good send and really good circling, you know, and then once that was really good, then I started thinking about the stop and making that really good. But I just let the horse focus on one thing and get good at that, because normally that's enough to bring them down. I don't go and add on. See, some people do the mistake and they'll back off completely. Like they'll stop, like they'll ask the horse to do something. The horse will chuck a bit of a fit and they'll freak out and they'll stop it. They don't let the horse just kind of keep working out, they'll stop it. But what they don't understand is that they just stopped and released the pressure. And then, you know, the horse just then learns that, well, okay, when that happens to me, I'll have a big emotional outburst, and because that's what I do and I'll stop. Okay, so a lot of the times it's just keeping the horse going and waiting until the horse, you know, if you don't add anything to the horse, but you just focus on them doing that one thing, that's how you bring them down, because you're bringing them down with clarity. You're letting them understand. They're learning how to navigate what you're asking them to do, and that will calm the horse down. All right, so I hope that gives some insights. I'm just going to turn my attention now to your comments. Okay. Okay, Zoe, Bridget likes me way more now that she can navigate me, yeah. And that I'm less worried about her liking me. Yeah, it's like one of those things. If you really want someone to like you, you'll drive them away, you know, almost things. But if you just let it go, you know, the whole Buddhist thing of just letting it go, just be yourself, be a clear communicator, it's amazing what happens. And you just focus on being a better communicator, you know, watching them more carefully, and you become then reliable. They then start trusting you. They then start really enjoying your pats and your company and your carrots, okay, because you're the cool person to work with. Okay, Renee, that kind of makes me feel better for horses in some way, because they get sold and passed around so much more than dogs. So it's probably a good thing that they don't attach and don't care who their human is. Oh, look, I hope it didn't come across that. Horses can get to know you very well and they can get to trust you, but they're different than dogs, okay? They are different, and it takes, like, I can really only say that I've met a handful of people in my life that have been able to cultivate really, really deep, kind of close, attached relationships with their horse, okay? And ironically, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have like a good working relationship with the horse, okay? Sometimes they have a bit of trouble, but the horse really does have this kind of attachment to them. Yeah, so they still can do it, and it's just something that you got to really strive for with a horse, and it's very easy with a dog, okay? A dog's just let you get away with stuff. Horses don't. And so you're always striving to get that horses. You strive, first of all, you know, to get their attention, to motivate and communicate with them. And then you strive to be able to get their kind of trust. All right. And then once you've got their trust, then you can start really cultivating something really, really special. But you got to work for it. Okay, because they lose trust very, very quickly, and you got to really, really work for it. Karen, that was Ayla on Monday. And they do, and that's something you got to understand. That's one thing, is that horses are emotional creatures, and they have emotional days, okay? And a big part of learning how to work with them and build confidence and trust is just accepting them, that's what they are. And you know that thing, that saying, you got to work with the horse that you've got that day. And you just do, and you learn to just put that away, you know. There's just some situations, some moons aligned or whatever, and the horse is just, you know, it's just a bit more emotional that day. And part of working horses is accepting that, and accepting this is a really important thing to learn. You've got to learn to ride the horse's wave of motivation, okay? The wave of motivation. And what that means is that horses will be they're individuals, right, with their own feelings and things like that, and for a lot of reasons that we have no idea about. We have no idea about how that grass in their paddock has affected them and make them feel. We have no idea about that smell in the air that's doing that. We have no idea how they're actually feeling, or if they might have, like, you know, slipped and pulled their back muscle the night before when we were completely not oblivious to it. We have no idea about what the season is triggering in them at the particular moment. There's a lot of things we have no idea about. So when you work a horse, they can be a little bit different emotionally from day to day. And when you first start off a relationship with the horse, or it's only new, and you're going through what I call the storming stage, okay? Because you form a relationship with horse, you meet the horse, you then got to go through a storming stage, which is where you work it all out. Then you start norming, okay? You start getting it together with some little ups and downs and stuff like that, and then you start performing. And everything has to go through that. That's not my thing. Forming, storming, norming, and performing is actually called the Tuckman model of forming teams. And horses and the people that you form a partnership with that horse, you all go through it. You have to go through it. It's where you learn that communication and boundaries and way of working. And you have to, part of that thing is you're learning that they are an emotional creature and they are going to be different. And when you're going through that storming and also some norming stage, is that, you're going to get them being a little bit more emotional during that time period. So you with horses, and when you work with them, you just learn to accept that, and you learn to adapt. Okay, you learn to adapt, and that's the whole thing that I was saying. You learn, so you're a little bit up today, something's a little bit up, you're not 100% yourself, you're a bit more up than normal. Okay, so then you make choices about what you're going to do with them. You're going to ride that wave of motivation. You've got motive, because remember what I said, the whole important thing, we've got to become the filter for the horse to be able to kind of feel good in its environment through the environment, and the emotions being filtered through you. Okay, so they look to you to see whether you're okay with it. But to do that, you first of all got to get their attention and focus, so that they know to look to you and to be guided by how you're telling them to feel about it. Now, that's what you've got to do through training. Now, some days that's actually hard to get their attention because other things are competing with you. All right. So some days it will be a little bit tricky. So it's tricky. So if it's really crazy weather, right, or there's been a fox in the area that you've been working, you've got some competition going on for like what environmental influences and changes are coming through and affecting them. They might not be coming through you. They might be coming through the thunderstorm. Okay, so you got to learn to ride that horse's wave of motivation of being actually able to focus on you without the level of distraction. You've got to learn to be able to overcome those distractions. And then how you're going to do that. And when you're working with them in that state, what kind of things, their motivation, you've got to ride that wave. And ride that wave is all about making decisions of what to do with them during that session that's going to make it a good, successful riding experience or working experience for both of you. And you learn to do that. All right, so any comments? Okay, so Nichelle, Xena becomes like a statue and really focused on whatever she senses. So she's one of those horses that really kind of grinds to a halt. And you've got to learn to get out of that. So that knowing about the investigatory reflex for you is really important. So, when they have that, they get triggered and they get that hard focus, okay? That hard, their whole body gets like zoned in on it. And that's like a reflex thing. That's them not deciding to do it. It's a reflex where they're really honed in on it. And that's why I put that little video up on the main Calm, Willing, Confident Horse group and showing you how they hard focus and then they'll come back online. And you can always tell when they come back online because they go, and they come back a little softer. Okay, so they go hard focus and it's usually on average 13 seconds, usually no more than 13 seconds. It'll be hard focus and they will go like a statue, and then you'll see them go, and then they'll come back, but they'll come back a little softer and then they'll look away again. So they're still observing, they're still not sure, but that moment they go hard focus and away, that's when they realize they're not going to die. Okay, they're still a bit wary, but it's not deathly. Okay, so that's what I talk about with the investigatory reflex. When they flick into that, just wait for that little moment for them to go look away and then come back before you engage them back. All right, Deb, it's taken 2 years of me to really start to develop a deeper relationship and trust with Snippet, although I've adored him right from the start. Yes, you do, and that's beautiful. Yeah, so it's like you got to love them and then you got to go through the process of them loving you. Okay, Anna, this is how, yeah, Aladdin spends most of his life, bless him. Oh, well, with Aladdin, what we have to do is got to train him that you're the filter. Okay, and there's a way to do it. Okay, and yeah, starting in the round yard, that is the place to start it. Okay, Michelle, so it's my body response, breathing and tension that I need to work on. Yeah, good question. You need to work on two aspects. You got to train the horse, and it is something you train them to do, to focus on you, that you are important. Okay, and that's something you've got to do. You are important, so they've got to have awareness, and if they're following you, right, you got to train them to focus, give your attention, follow you, and be motivated to do that. Then you also then have to be a good filter. Yeah, so then they will pick that up. And like, you know, and like I work this out by, you know, just trial and error. And you can see it at clinics, you know, like some will just say, you know, first day of the clinic, first lesson, horses come in and some of them are really off their tree, right? They're really off their tree. I take the lead rope and they calm down by about 80% just because I'm on the end of the lead rope. Okay? That's because they're picking up on me. They're picking up on my energy. And as soon as I start working them, they'll come back down completely and look like a completely different horse. That's because I've motivated them that I'm important, I've got their attention, I'm motivating them to follow me, and then they sense that I am okay, and so they're okay. So that's what you got to do. So it's you plus also skills. So that's why I believe it's very important to learn the skill, okay, learn the technique, learn the skill, and then the confidence comes along with that as you feel more comfortable and in control. It's all kind of connected, but you got to learn it in a way. You just can't go, it's impossible. And this is where a lot of confidence, you know, horse rider confidence programs fail, is that they try to tell you that it's all about just change you, just visualize lovely and niceness and focus on your breathing and go and meditate and, you know, everything will be fine. It won't, because your brain knows that you're out of control and you're not safe, and it won't let you. So you've got to show and develop the skills to be able to do it, okay, to be able to work and influence a horse and prove to your brain that you can work and influence that horse and keep yourself safe. You cannot get confident with a horse without skill development. You need to be able to do stuff. And in the last couple of days of this challenge, like starting from tonight, I'm going to start focusing on talking about your skill development, okay? And how that that's got to improve first before you can actually start getting confident. It's like you can't get confident on a bike until you learn how to balance of it and ride it. Okay, you can't just hang out with the bike and feel good about it. You've actually got to go through those kind of wobbly moments and learn, and then clock up some kilometers on it and then do some other things before you get really confident on it. Horses are no different, but learning to ride the bike is learning how to influence them, okay, and feeling that sense of control and understanding how they work. Yeah, I hope that helps. All right, but yeah, learning your own body response is so important. Becoming aware of it is a massive part of it, but the skill development's got to come kind of first. All right, so let's go to the next question. All right, I'd like some strategy exercises to help with when a horse starts a ride with really high energy and you don't know why, and you don't have a lot of time to do a lot of groundwork, and you've got a job to do on cattle. How to keep myself feeling calm and confident. Okay, so this again is an example of you shouldn't be putting yourself in that situation. That's just dangerous. Okay, that's like going, oh God, I've got to fly a plane and there's like a hurricane coming, I'm going to take off in the middle of it. Okay, you've got to, if you know that your horse can do that, again, it's all about prevention. It's all about being able to know your horse, know what can happen, and it's just like I just teach you to always be prepared. So I wouldn't let that happen. You know, I would not give myself no time to do groundwork. I'd be getting there earlier and checking all that stuff out before I did it. Because if you go out and your horse is up, and then you got to go do cattle work with it, you're just putting yourself in a massive risk zone of getting hurt, and then you're just relying on yourself. That you're actually not giving the horse a cool experience either. It's up because it's stress and it's not feeling cool. So, our job with them is to get them in a cool place where they're okay. And so you got to do what you got to do to make them feel better. So my answer to that is the strategies and exercises to help with that is to get there earlier and do a lot more groundwork just to check it out. All right. It's just prepare that horse. That thing is, poor preparation goes to poor performance. Okay. That saying. So better preparation, better understanding of that horse and how it tends to be. And then just say you had a horse that was never like that and you got on it and it was like that, that'd be a little bit red flag for me that might be something going on with that horse because that's out of character. So yeah, I'd get there earlier and prepare better to do this job. All right. Now, let's just say though, I've always got to be fair and answer. What would happen if I got on a horse and it suddenly started to be like that, up like that? Okay. So, as I said, figures of 8 are your friend. I just keep riding that figure of 8. Now, this is the thing about the figure of 8, is that people think, oh God, I've done 10 figures of 8 already and it's not calmed down. It obviously doesn't work. When I have a horse and it's really, and something's happening, or I'm just teaching it something, I don't have a limit on, I know it works and I'm just going to stay there and keep doing it until they arrive. I don't have that expectation that it should work in 5 seconds, but lots of people do. They do it for 5 seconds. It doesn't work. So they throw it out and decide it doesn't work. So with the figures of 8, let me tell you what I do. I'll just do some figures of 8. I'll just keep winding the horse, riding the best figures of 8 that I can. And what I have, I just keep riding. I keep myself the same and I just keep riding the line, focus on the line. And what happens, the horse might be all over the place, but then it will arrive. The horse will arrive and they'll start doing some nice figures of 8 and calm down. So then I might, you might ride a couple of steps forward and it gets up again. Well, I don't care. You just start the whole thing again. Just ride some figures of 8, ride some figures of 8, ride some figures of 8. So I don't care. Whether it's, whether it got back up again or it got worried again. I don't care. I just do go back to working with the figures of 8 again. I just keep going. I just keep doing it. I don't give up. Okay, lots of people give up. And if you have a look after they gave up after 30 seconds and decided it didn't work. You just got to keep doing. You got to have faith in it. And as I say to the horse, it's just like, it's okay. We're just going to do this until you get it. I'm a human. I've got way more patience and determination than you. I'm just going to stick it out because I know you will arrive and you will be okay. All right. Okay, so that's my answer to that question. Just going to go to the comments now if you guys have got any comments about that. Okay, so Hanifa, my husband suggested I go ride a bike for a while to build my balance up again. That's actually a really good idea. Charlotte Jardine, she actually cycles every day. That's actually her exercise. So riding a bike is actually good exercise and good, it is good for your balance. It is kind of different balance muscles, but it's still quite good. All right. Now, this is a good question here. Is it possible to lose confidence and fear in one horse? I rode my other horse yesterday out on the new trail with no worry. He is a legend. I rode my anxious horse today on the same trail and felt very different. He did nothing wrong. Can we rebuild trust in each other? I'm worried we can't. I've had him almost 2 years. Trying not to be hard on myself, but this thought just keeps raising its ugly head. Okay. Yes, you can lose confidence in one horse and not the other. Okay, absolutely. Because remember, when reading my book, we build trust in horses. So your older horse, the other horse, that horse you trust, that horse that's locked into your brain, that horse is reliable, right? That horse, you feel confident on that horse. But the other horse that's not, you don't trust him because that trust hasn't been built or the trust has been lost. All right. And most likely the horse doesn't trust you either. Okay. And the horse that you do trust most likely trusts you. Okay. So it's relationship based. So with every horse, it's a partnership and it's a relationship. So with the horse that is anxious, it's anxious because it's not trusting you. You're not trusting it. It's not trusting you. You're not confident on it. It's not confident on you. Can you do something about it? Absolutely. You just got to start again. Okay, and that's where you go, right, I'm going to completely reboot you, and then I'm going to reboot me, and we're going to reboot it together. And just because you've owned him for 2 years, it doesn't mean you've been working on the relationship well or doing what that horse needs well. Yeah, because all horses are different. You got to get to know their style. You get to know them, okay, so that they become predictable and reliable. And working with them and rebooting them from scratch and putting you in control of the operating system that sits underneath everything you do is where the power comes from. So I have absolutely all faith in the world that you could definitely rebuild trust, okay, and develop trust. I've seen terrible relationships between horses and their people, terrible mistrust, and amazing, absolute, wonderful turnarounds. But they had to go back to absolute scratch, okay, absolute scratch. And then, you know, and truly people think, oh God, that's going to take a long time. You know, seriously, it takes, at the smallest level, okay, the minimum amount of time is a month. The maximum amount of time is 8 weeks, 2 months. That's not long, okay? And you can rebuild a horse's foundation, and you can do that while learning how to do it yourself. It's really within that time period. Is you just got to reboot them, okay? Reboot them, rebuild them from scratch, and be in control of those building blocks and how you put them together. Absolutely. It's just that in that 2 years you haven't done that. You haven't done that successfully for that horse. And you just need some guidance and help to be able to do that. But yeah, be excited by it, you know, because it's cool. You can have, if you've been able to form a good relationship with one horse, you'll be able to do it with another one. You just got to learn this particular horse. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the comments now. Zoe, I trust Bridget way more than Mister, my pony, yes, but we haven't done much together, yeah, and the more we do, the more I understand Mister, and the more I find I trust him, and the more he knows he can work me out, yes, and the more he trusts me too, yeah. It's that concept I talk about in the book, Confidence and Trust. I talk about Brene Brown's marble jar, okay? The marble jar is important, that every time you have an interaction and it's successful, marble goes in the marble trust jar, and the jar builds up with marbles. So with your horse, your older horse, you've got a full marble jar, okay? So if that horse does anything little and you might lose some marbles, just say it spooks at a bird and a few marbles come out of the jar, you still got so many marbles in there that you're okay. You know, you still feel that horse is quite reliable. But when your other horse that you don't have a lot of trust for, so you basically got an empty jar with a couple of marbles in it, if it does a little spook, you know, the jar's smashed again and you start from start. So it's all about strategically building up moments to put marbles in the jar, so the jar gets fuller and fuller, so you got lots of trust in the bank. You actually got to do exactly the same to the horse from the horse's perception in learning to trust you. Okay? Hope that was helpful. All right. I've got a couple of minutes left. Might be able to get these questions done. Okay, I'd like to have the confidence to know that I'm asking my horse the right questions all the time, because sometimes she does not respond as expected. All right, so this is because you need to learn, and like everyone does, is how to communicate, how to teach a horse, how to teach them. Because every time I'm with a horse and I apply an aid, I'm effectively asking the horse a question. Can you turn left, please? Can you turn right, please? Can you halt, please? Can you do an extended trot, please? Okay, can you canter, please? And if the horse doesn't do it, okay, they don't act as expected, they're telling me they either, I don't understand, I'm not motivated, or I'm not confident. Okay, that's their answer to not answering as I expect. That's what that means. And so therefore I switch in, okay, you don't understand. Let me reteach you. Okay, so I go back and do that. And reteaching helps with the motivation. Okay, so they go hand in hand. And then it might just be you're not confident at it. Okay, so I might have to go backwards a little bit in my training. But so when I ask a horse to do something, Its response is very important, because it's not just if a horse does something, it's how it does it that I have to teach you to be very aware of. That is the important thing. And that's why I said, remember at the start of this live, I talked about the very important trot canter transition to me. That means so much. It tells me so much. It tells me everything. It tells me whether the horse understands to canter. It understands if it's motivated, if it's scared or not to canter or worried about it, and its confidence to actually canter and how balanced it feels. It's telling me so much. It's giving me horses talk. We don't think, but horses talk in their response. When you ask them a question, ask them to do something, they talk back and tell you what they know. They tell you what they know, and they tell you how they feel, basically in the nutshell. They tell you what they know, they tell you if you understand, and they tell you whether they're motivated and their level of confidence in how they feel about it. Okay? So that's one aspect to it. So you got to learn to see that, observe that, process that information, what the horse does in those realms. The horse might not understand, not motivated, not confident, and know what to do about that. But then there's another thing on top of this that I know you guys, because the reason why I can help you so much is I was no different from you. I've been there, okay? I've been where you are, and I know a big thing in my horsing life is knowing what to do with my horse. Like I used to go to lessons every week. Every single week I went to riding lessons. And then when I get on my horse when I wasn't at a lesson, I'd be like, ooh, what do I do? And it's like, I just repeat what I did in that lesson because I had no idea how to put together kind of what I would do when I got on my horse. I didn't know actually how to train my horse. I just was able to follow instructions of what to do. But part of learning how to reboot a horse is learning how to, when you get on the horse, what should you do? What should you do? What should you be checking? How should you be responding if they do something? Okay, so just so you know, a little bit of insight into me. When I sit on a horse, get on a horse, I'm taking a lot of notice of how it stands at the mounting block. When I get on it, I'm taking notice whether it moved off or stood still. Then I will always flex it just to I'm always testing, like, how's your steering wheel today? I will then might yield its hindquarters one way than the other. I'm just testing its leg response and its basic lateral response. And then I'll walk it off on a loose rein. And I'm looking at that, and I'll just might start doing it. Depends on the level of education of the horse, but I'm analyzing it as I go. I go, how's your bend left today? How's your bend right today? Are you listening to my seat today? How's your upward transitions today? How's your big circle, your small circle? All right, I'm asking it questions. How's your body feeling today? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? That's what I'm doing. And that's what you got to learn how to do, is how to put together something like that. Like, what do you do when you get on your horse? What's the purpose? What are you doing? And learning how to do that, because I knew I had no idea. I just repeated what I'd done in my lesson. That's what most people do. And you're a bit lost, and it's like, oh, what will I do? I might go walk over a pole a few times. They don't know. You got to have a reason and a purpose for everything that you do, okay? And learning what that is, and you can, and it's pretty fun. All right, so just going to the comments now. The day I learned what Bridget, I am thinking very hard about this right now, face was a game changer for us, and having a process for teaching things with Mister is making things go much easier. Yeah, very true, Zoe. Okay, guess what? Last question. Just an itty bitty question to hopefully add for those in the group and the hunter. Okay, it's going to be raining tomorrow. Normally I would use this as an excuse not to work. Are there some tips for working on not so perfect weather training? Okay, so if you've got the luxury of having a bit of time, I always scan the rain radars for the day and the weather radars for the day to pick the time where I know the weather's going to be the best. Or at least the least nasty to go out there. But, I'll pick I don't get put off by a bit of a sprinkle or a bit of wet weather. That doesn't worry me. I'll go out there and work. And it's funny that when you just get into that attitude and whatever, and you've got a good jacket and you've got good boots that don't leak and stuff like that, that you get quite immune to the weather. But I just make sure, you just do something simpler that day. You might just do groundwork. That's why learning groundwork and round penning is really good. So on those days that it's a little bit more hairy weather, you can go do something like that. You can still keep your horse fit, because remember, consistent work, we need to keep these horse fit and in work. Having breaks is not good for them. I've all made you do Pilates, and I hope you all saw how sore your muscles got. So working them and keeping them fit is for them. It's for their comfort. You got to do it. Otherwise, you're setting them up to feel uncomfortable. So that's why I go out in the rain. Of course, if it's some crazy gale force wind, I won't do it. But, I'll just look to see at the time it's the least. And if not, I've got to do it. I just go and do it. I just might not do something. I might do something similar. I might just do some groundwork, but I make sure that horse gets its exercise. Okay, it gets to breathe and stretch its muscle and do something gymnastic, because that's really important for it. Okay, Karen, awesome advice for riding plan. Yeah, no worries. I can teach you all that, having that idea of knowing exactly how to work your horse. Now, last little thing I want to say about dogs, okay, because someone asked about that dogs at the fence, okay? You got to actually learn to chase dogs. Okay, so it's always good on your horse, okay, to actually... Dogs will get out of the road of the horse if you learn to teach your horse, ride up to them and ride into the dog. The dogs will back off, okay? They will back off. So that's how I learned. There's the thing from Buck Brenneman, which is called you chase the trouble, okay? So if something worries the horse, it will, if you chase it, it'll make it a lot more confident with it, okay? So that's what I learned to do. So if a dog barks at my horse at the fence, I ride towards the fence. It's really interesting how the dogs will always back off. Okay, they'll take a step back and the horse will go. Okay, we get very confident with dogs and not worried about them. Alternatively, what can do if that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, which is perfectly okay, is to just make sure that you just create distance between the dogs. That might be the carrot stop. Take them, get them in hand, walk past, give them a carrot. Don't feel bad if you want to go for a ride and there's this spot where the nasty dogs are. I'm not going to think bad of you if you get off and walk your horse past. That doesn't matter. Walk on the other side of the road as far away from it. There's no crime in doing that. But yeah, learning how to chase the trouble, okay? Because you'll be surprised the dogs will put the tail between their leg and they'll go. And that's how you really create a lot of confidence with a horse and a dog. Okay, but otherwise, do those things. Create some space from the dog. Okay, get off and walk past it. Don't feel bad about doing that. Okay, walk your horse in hand past the dogs and things like that, if it helps. And always remember, talk to the dogs. Talk to them like they're your best friend. That also helps too. All right, guys, I'll leave it there, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, see ya.